Hello and welcome, dear friends. Bernd here, and today we're talking about the topic rejuvenation pruning for phalaenopsis. So with orchids here we see I've already done that. Here you can see the roots that are growing nicely along the edge. And with fresh substrate it can settle in nicely now. Getting used to it. And with this plant, this is a tennis. Schubert, this is a hybrid that has purple-blue flowers and why? Rejuvenation pruning. You can see there are a lot of old roots down here. This spross has now become very long and the root system down there can completely out. Then there are a lot of aerial roots here, which means that the plant definitely needs a new pot. Yes, and there are a lot of old roots present that have not been able to get any air through the compacted substrate, have and are dead, and all of that needs to be removed. You can use a regular, standard pair of scissors for that. And for the very stubborn and somewhat harder things. Good. Sturdy vine shear. A sturdy pair of scissors is also quite good. Sometimes it's, especially let's say, a bit woody, and for that you really need a sturdy pair of scissors. Then for repotting I have pure pine bark here, mixed a bit with sphagnum moss, as you can see. And I use that for repotting. Meanwhile, this pine bark in the storage bags are already quite dry, but that doesn't matter because they need to stand dry for a few days anyway. Let them stand dry for a few days. What you could do with the substrate is to moisten it so that it has soaked up water for a few hours, but then don't water the plant further once it's repotted. But that's just a side note. What I'm doing now is, first of all, remove all these dried and old roots. And also the old flower shoots. I can't do that with this small pair of scissors anymore. Then I need a slightly stronger pair of scissors. You can find old flower shoots all everywhere. You can remove them. Since I already have the scissors in my hand, I can cut there. Also with this cutting, it's important that when you cut into healthy plant material, the scissors should be disinfected. Here with these dried roots, it's not that bad. If it were now, I don't want to say contaminated or not disinfected, that would be... Of course, it's kind of silly. But you can see that it's completely dried out. And if there were any fungal spores or anything on the scissors, it wouldn't really matter. Because where is it even supposed to settle? But if you were to cut back leaves here now, which is usually not done, then if it's actively rooted, the cutting tool should definitely be disinfected. You just saw, you can just break it off at the bottom. That means it's not really active anymore. You can see it's brown, so there's really nothing active there. Green is fine with me. You can completely eliminate that. Ideally, you can gently feel the roots if you're not sure whether they are dead or not. There are a few fresh roots which have more or less active root tips. So they are still a bit green, but that should change as soon as they are repotted. Here you see a typical, completely white root. They form where it is particularly moist, so there's no chlorophyll in there at all. So anyone who still claims that roots absolutely need light, or that they are only there for the orchids to contain chlorophyll and absorb light, that's only partially true. You see here there are roots that are completely white, there's no chlorophyll in them, so no light absorption can take place there. These black spots, that's not a fungus. However, you can describe that as Bernd. That's from the fertilizer. And you can see, you can just gently wipe off the roots. That might seem a bit radical now, but it doesn't matter. The plant has a lot of active roots and that doesn't matter at all. Here's another nice example of a white root without chlorophyll. So this one is really completely white. I know it's hard for me to judge it on camera right now, whether it represents it correctly, but you can possibly see that it is completely white. Here is another root. It has an active root tip. You can tell by this crisp green, bounded by the silver skin. So this is definitely an active root. It also comes out of this old root, so it fits perfectly. Then it's important to remove any dried leaves that are there. You need to take those off too, because if the roots want to break through, it's like a wooden board. Now I've broken the root here, but I see that as less dramatic. And this wood is then hard for the roots to penetrate. So you do that carefully. This hybrid, Canis Schubert, is quite sensitive, like many other Doritis species. When it comes to root breaking, they have very firm weighting roots, and they break very, very easily, which breaks a lot, very easily. You have to be a little careful. The flower shoots, you can also carefully break them off. You can also leave them on. Then you just take a look at the whole thing. Does it fit in terms of construction, or do you need to do anything else? You might still need to cut something out. Since the flower shoots are completely dried out, you can also leave them on. Yes, and you can remove the lowest leaves. You can take them off, because they will end up being, well, the plant will be pushed down into the pot anyway. That the lowest leaves would also be in the substrate. And then it's all done. You can still break off the flower shoot here. Have we taken care of that? We're also going to remove this piece of leaf. And then the plant is practically ready for the drip again. Here, this lower piece, which really doesn't have much function anymore, we have removed it. That was attached here before. And now the plant is noticeably poorer and more compact. Again, because older plants have that. They grow out of the pot and eventually they hang out. And when we put it in the pot now, then it looks nice again. Space. It also sits well in the pot. Now one could consider, I'll remove this lower leaf. That's already quite far down. You can easily remove the leaves by pulling a little and then pulling the leaf over, and then it breaks off. So leaves also have a predetermined breaking point. This is here. This, how do I put this now? This belt, you can also break leaves off quite easily in a normal way. But you don't always have to do that, right? Now I would say the plant is ready and can be potted. And you can already see here is another root with an active root tip. Then you miss the whole thing. When the roots are a bit moist, they are a little more flexible. But in this case it works. You might need to help a little with that. And you can see the plant itself is already sitting quite well in terms of length and depth. And then you fill it up very, very loosely with substrate. Since the substrate is quite dry, it does get dusty, of course. I always tap it down a bit firmly, but there is also every gap is filled. It also looks like the root is growing in here. So you have to be careful that you don't use any parts. The rotten ones can, with the substrate packed. And then the plant is practically potted and can now stay here for about a week. It has strong, healthy roots. Stay here for a week, and then you can water it, and it will continue to develop and hopefully soon produce a flower shoot. The leaves themselves are still quite crisp, and it will hold up well over the next few days. We haven't damaged much now. We have removed the sick parts. I'd like to show that again. Why? There is still a good solid root in there, but there's a good solid root in there, but you can do without those. If you've done everything right, it will recover quickly and then also form a bloom. And then we can enjoy the puddle again. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, if you have any questions, drop down into the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and goodbye.